Good morning and welcome to the School of Consciousness. I'm excited to be here with you again. Today, we're going to be talking about a topic of emotional regulation. This is not something that we've talked about recently. However, it is going to touch on some concepts that I've been sharing over the last couple of months. So, we're going to talk about emotional regulation. And before we start, an invitation for you to, again, log in to your awareness point. You can do this at any time. You can do it with your eyes closed. You can do it with your eyes open. Log into the point of awareness. And you can do that by simply saying to yourself, I see myself and I see my reality. So do that right now. Log in. Log into the here and now. I see myself and I see my reality. I'm aware of myself. I'm aware of where I am. I'm aware of what I am doing. And when you do that, when you say that to yourself, when you repeat that mantra or that affirmation, which you can do at any point in the day, it brings you into awareness. It logs you in to the awareness point. And it's something that I want to encourage you to do regularly, not just once a day, multiple times a day. Consistently, constantly just logging into that point of awareness, just like you're stamping your time card, right? Oh, here I am. Here I am. Here I am. And over and over again, right? Meditation is a great tool to do that. You can sit there and you can close your eyes and we can do that together. And we have done that together. And you take a few breaths and, you work on concentrating the mind. You work on focusing in the mind. You work on letting go of the thoughts. That's great. Great practice. However, you can also do this practice in other ways, right? By repeating this mantra to yourself. I see myself and I see my reality. I'm aware of myself, I'm aware of what I'm doing, and I'm aware of where I am. And the reason why this is such a great mantra is because you can use it at any point in time. And when you are feeling heightened emotionally, which I know happens to everyone, it's a great way just to reconnect yourself back to the present moment without feeling like, oh, I need to take some breaths or I need to take 10 minutes to do meditation. Even if you're in a heightened emotional situation, you can just say to yourself, I see myself. I see where I am. I see what I'm doing. I see that I'm coming from this place of ego, or I see that I'm getting angry, or I see that I'm getting anxious. Just that observation is enough to bring you out of it. So that's the mantra I wanted to share with you guys today. I see myself and I see my reality. I'm aware of myself. I'm aware of where I am and I'm aware of what I'm doing. And what that does is it pulls you out of the story, out of the shitstorm that can be your emotions, and it brings you into the present moment and the here and now. It logs you into a point of awareness, and in that point of awareness, you can change your perspective. So that's a great mantra. You can add it to your tool belt of things to practice. You've got your meditation, you've got breathing, and this mantra as well. And so thank you for being here with me today and really being here with me, being present, being in awareness for the next, 20 minutes or so, 25 minutes probably now. If you just practice doing this every week, showing up here and logging into awareness, even that is going to help a lot, right? But if you can take this between sessions, right, between these sessions every week and practice daily and even multiple times a day, you're going to change your perspective. You're going to change your attitude. You're going to change your viewpoint, and your life will start to improve in a positive way. So that is that. Now let's talk about emotional regulation. And the story that I've been sharing for the last couple of weeks about a experience that I had where I had a bit of like a out of the blue emotional breakdown, kind of a lot of tears and stuff like that. I'm going to share a little bit more about that today. But the point that I want to drive home is the power of awareness and the power of like being able to bring yourself into awareness, being able to log in to awareness at any point. That's going to be the real takeaway from this story. But what happened was I was with my wife and we were having a bit of an argument in the car, and I was getting heightened. I don't usually get heightened like that. Sometimes I do, but I'm pretty good at controlling it. But it was just this heightened experience of like a bit of anger and frustration and kind of blame as well, like pointing the finger and going, it's your fault. And what happened in this situation was we were obviously having this kind of, heated conversation, and she was, putting her boundaries up, which was great that she did that. And I was kind of like overstepping the boundary. And because she held her boundary so firm and so strong, it really made me reflect on myself. It gave me a chance to actually log into the awareness point. She didn't just let me like overpower her or anything like that, which is great, which is what you want in a partner, right? You want someone who can pull you out, who can call you up into a higher version of yourself. I think that's really important. So that's what she was doing for me. She was calling me out. She was calling me up into a higher version of myself. And so I had to humble my ego, and I had to stop and take a look at myself and ask myself, why am I getting so angry? Like, why am I so frustrated right now? Because I know in my heart that I don't want to necessarily be angry or frustrated. And I know in my heart that I can actually work through that. It's what I teach a lot of my clients how to do. So I knew in this moment I had to do that to myself. I had to coach myself or guide myself through this process. Why am I so angry? Why am I so frustrated? Now, before I get into all of the why and the how, that there's a very subtle kind of point where when you're having an experience like this, when you're feeling heightened, you're feeling like you're frustrated, you're feeling like you're angry, or whatever other emotion it is, maybe you're getting heightened into anxiety or overthinking, negative thought patterns, any of these kind of experiences that we have that aren't pleasant. There's a very subtle difference between being in the story and letting it take over, which is essentially being in your ego, in your mind, letting this kind of narrative play out and actually take over, to being aware of it and coming above it or coming out of it. And it's, it's like a fork in the road, essentially, where you could stay in your ego, or I could have stayed in my ego. I could have continued to justify why I was angry. I could have continued to justify why I was frustrated and try to rationalize with it and say, this is, I'm allowed to feel like this, right? However, that's not the kind of person I want to be, and that's not the kind of life that I want to live. I don't want to necessarily be an angry or frustrated person. So the other fork in the road is self-reflection, self-inquiry. So one of the roads keeps going down the path of ego and anger and frustration in that case, and the other road goes to awareness and the higher self and self-reflection and self-inquiry. Why am I feeling this way? Why am I acting like this? Right? As opposed to, I'm allowed to act like this, and this feeling is justified, and I'm allowed to be angry, and I'm allowed to blame her. That's all ego. That's one path, and that's a path of ego. It's a path of like the lower self, right? It's the path where you justify. Oh, you're essentially the victim. In that case, I was playing the victim role, right? I was the victim in that case. I was angry. Something had gone wrong, and I was the victim. And oh my God. And so because of that, I was allowed to be angry. And if I had stayed down that path, that would have just continued. And, there's a lot of unknown variables about what could happen if I lived my life like that, right? Probably my life would go to shit, right? I don't think my wife would be happy with me. And, then I'd maybe pass that kind of stuff on to my kids, or I've only got one kid at the moment, but in the future, so and maybe other relationships, business, work. Like I wouldn't be in integrity as a coach or a teacher. Like there would be this whole like myriad of things that could happen that would be negative. And so in your own life, it's important to also think about, okay, if I keep going down this path of ego and I keep justifying being an angry person or being frustrated or being anxious or being whatever it is, what is that going to lead to? Probably not something that you want. Other way, awareness and the higher self and self-reflection and self-inquiry. This is the path where you can actually start to see yourself, see your ego, and humble it and go, okay, well, I don't actually want to go down that path. I actually want to live more peaceful, happy, joyful kind of life, more loving, more open. In this anger state that I was in, it was very closed. Like my walls were up and I there was no getting in. My heart was shut off. I don't want to live like that. I'm not sure about you guys, but I want to live with an open heart. I want to live in a loving way, peaceful way. And so that requires me to humble myself, to be vulnerable and to go, okay, well, maybe I'm wrong, or maybe this anger isn't justified. Maybe I don't like this is not okay for me to be angry like this. And when you do that, very interesting things happen. You start to reflect and go, well, why am I feeling angry? And it often requires, and I know it did for me, to be in this vulnerable state of not knowing. Because I was justifying. I'm allowed to feel like this. I'm allowed to feel like this. It's your fault or whatever, right? Which is essentially just not even true. But then when I said, okay, well, what if I'm wrong? What if this is not justified? And I had to spend a few moments there in not knowing. Like, okay, well, I don't know why I'm feeling this way then. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I don't, this is not justified. And if that's the case, like, why am I feeling this way? What am I feeling? So you have to be in this space of unknown. You have to create that space. You have to open up, be vulnerable. And I spent a few minutes there in this situation that I'm sharing with you guys. I spent a few minutes of going, okay, well, maybe I don't know. Like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know why I'm so angry. I don't know why I'm so frustrated, right? Being in that space of not knowing. And then I stayed there for a little while, just in this present awareness. We had this, a few moments in the car where she was just present and she wasn't like pushing me at this stage. And I was just present in this space of, I don't know why I'm doing this. I don't know. Like, I don't know. I'm sorry. And then I had this emotion come up, right? And then I had this feeling come up. Then I had this thought come up, and then I just started crying. And it was kind of like for me, it's very individual. If you were doing this for yourself, it would be totally something related to your life. For my life, it was a feeling of like she was trying to fuck me over. That was the deep unconscious belief system that was making me angry because I thought this is why your thoughts aren't always true and you don't even sometimes even know what you're thinking. Because I didn't even know that I was thinking that until it came up. I wasn't consciously thinking it. It was like a deep belief system, an unconscious belief system where I had this unconscious belief system that my wife was trying to fuck me over. And that was something that I learned. She didn't do anything of the sort. There was like nothing that she did that was like that at all. But that was my belief system from things that I learned from my parents. And so I had this big crying and I was like, wow, I feel like you're gonna like I feel like I'm scared you're gonna fuck me over. And that's why I'm angry. Which is just not true. She's not gonna fuck me over. Like she loves me. So I'm sharing this story just because it's nice to share personal stories. I think it's helpful to find that relevance and that relatability. And it went even further, right? Because once I had that experience, I started crying. She held me. We went inside. I had a bit of more space. She came over and she gave me another hug. And she said she loves me. And I said, I know you love me. And then I started bawling my eyes out again because I felt like she didn't love me. Like there was this, like the reason why I was crying so much when I said, I know you love me is because I was realizing that I had a deep unconscious belief that she didn't love me. or that I was unloved, right? Same thing, stories from the past. So with the work that I do with my clients, and with some of the work we've even done in here, we've done some inner child healing work in the School of Consciousness. There's these frameworks, there's processes to help you understand where your stuff is, where your trauma is, or where your triggers are coming from. So we've covered a little bit of that in the inner child session. That's more like active, direct inquiry into, okay, your stuff. But what I'm sharing with you today is actually more passive. I wasn't actively trying to do healing work on the way back from the markets. It just blindsided me. And so the difference is you can use the frameworks, you can use the techniques, you can use all of that, which I've shared some different things on the School of Consciousness, and you can use that. It's a very active way of doing things and getting to the bottom of things. The story that I'm sharing with you today was passive. It just happened. And it happened through pure awareness. It happened through presence. It didn't happen because I went, okay, step 1, step 2, step 3, here's why I'm feeling this way. It happened just because I allowed myself to be open and to be present. So I said we were going to talk about emotional regulation. One of the keys to emotional regulation, and this is really one of the most powerful things that you can ever work on in your life, is just self-awareness. Being aware. And actually, in my journey of meditation over the last 13, 14 years, for the first 10 years, I didn't even do any like frameworks, techniques, processes. I just did a lot of meditation. And the thing that you find with meditation, being in this state of awareness, is your guard drops, right? You open up. You're allowing yourself to be in this vulnerable state. Even, for example, like I used to meditate on the beach a lot. And even when I first started, the thought of closing my eyes on a public beach and sitting there with my eyes closed for 10, 15, 20 minutes, there's that in itself can bring up fear, anxiety, scare. Is someone going to come and hit me over the head or something like that? Or is a dog going to come and get me? Or like, is a snake going to come out of the bushes? Like those are thoughts that I would have, right? So even just sitting quietly with your eyes closed, it can be a very vulnerable thing to do because you don't know what's going to happen. You have to trust the world. You have to trust the world when you're sitting in meditation with your eyes closed. You've got to learn to trust the world because it is vulnerable. It can be vulnerable. But when you learn to trust the world and you start to have this mindset of like, I'm trusting that my wife actually does want the best for me. I'm trusting that she wants to help me be the best version of myself. I'm trusting that if I open up, it's not going to be used against me. Right? If you can develop that trust, if you can develop this ability to be vulnerable and trust, and to really give yourself that space in awareness to do that, that's enough. Right? That can be enough. And then you'll have powerful healing experiences when you're sitting in the car on the way home from the markets, right? Without even, needing to do journaling or anything like that. So that all happens just through awareness. So when it comes to emotional regulation, awareness is key. I see myself and I see my reality. Let's say you go about your week and you something happens on the weekend that triggers you. Maybe your kids do something, maybe your parents say something to you, maybe your partner or whatever says something, and you start to get triggered. You start to get that anger or that frustration or whatever it is, anxiety coming up. First thing to do, first thing, most important, primary, first thing to do, I see myself and I see my reality. I see where I am. I see what I'm doing. I'm seeing myself get angry. I'm seeing myself get frustrated. Because when you do that, that's when you can humble yourself and go, okay, cool. I don't want to be this. I'm going to choose the higher path. I'm going to choose the path of peace, of resolution, of trust. So you have to have the awareness first, and then you can choose what you want in the next moment. Because if you don't log into awareness, you're just going to continue to justify the story and just play out this narrative, and it won't help. You'll just end up in a fight, and you'll have to resolve that fight later. And if you don't, it'll just be a pain in the ass for your relationships. Cool. So one more thing that I'll kind of touch on before we jump off today is processing. Because a lot of people I talk to, when it comes to emotions, they say, "Well, I just need time to process it." And don't you need time to process it sometimes? Like, if something happens, so a lot of people want to run away, avoid it. I need some time to process this, right? I'm sure you've heard that before. People love to say that. Um, so yeah, like I said, you do need space to you need to allow yourself to come into some space, right? But that doesn't need to mean that you need to run away. You need to avoid something. Um, or like the two things are the avoidance of shutting down or the anxiety of like attaching yourself to it, right? Um, and it's one or the other depending on the person. But just be mindful of like when you actually need to process something versus when you just need to be present with what you're experiencing. Because a lot of people use this thing of like, oh, I just need some time to process this actually as an avoidant. I'm going to avoid it. I need to run away from this thing for the moment and I'll come back to it later, which is just avoidance. I was talking to a client about this yesterday, actually. She said she was having some troubles with her mum and she would get triggered on the phone to her mum and she would instantly just want to hang up and run away and put the phone down. And she didn't want to experience what she was experiencing with her mum. She said, I just want to avoid her. Or I felt like I almost wanted to just lie to her and just tell her some shit so I didn't have to keep talking to her. And I was like, that's avoidance. Like you're avoiding that whatever you're experiencing. You know, she was trying to justify that that was okay, but I basically just said that's just avoidance. Uh, and so, yeah, sometimes you do need some space to process, and you need a safe space to process, like what my wife provided to me in the car. She's a little bit of space, but if I had run away from that situation and just said, I can't be here right now, I got to go, I got to process my emotions, then I wouldn't have had the experience that I've had. So I didn't actually need to run away and process my emotions. What I needed to do was be in that uncomfortable experience, to be in this vulnerability of not knowing, to be with the anger and the frustration and actually go into it a little bit deeper and say, well, where is this coming from? And why am I feeling like this? So I didn't need to process it. I needed to be with it in that moment. And that's really important as well. Because we talk about emotional regulation and emotional intelligence. That is emotional intelligence, the ability to be with your emotions, the ability to be intelligent with your emotions. And that doesn't necessarily mean running away to process it for half an hour or 3 days, right? Because you'll probably just forget about it and you won't actually process it until you'll get triggered again down the track, and then you'll have the opportunity to actually deal with it in that moment, or you'll run away and say, I just need to process this again, and you never actually process anything. So be mindful of that. That's something that I end up talking about a lot with people, and something that I'm learning for myself as well. So that's emotional regulation, guys. And that's the session today. We'll finish off with a little meditation just to allow all of that information to land for us, right? So we do a little process right now, but it doesn't need to be a long process. It can be a minute, 30 seconds of just, okay, here I am. So you can close down your eyes and relax back into your chair whenever you're ready. And just start by taking a few deep breaths. So a few nice, deep, nourishing breaths. If you can, breathing through the nose into the belly. And then releasing the breath through the mouth or through the nose. As you breathe in, you breathe into your belly, allow your belly to fill up, and then allow that breath to gently come up into your chest and your heart space, filling up your lungs. And then as you exhale, allow your body to soften, to relax. And you can say to yourself, I see myself and I see my reality. I am aware of myself. I'm aware of where I am. And I am aware of what I am doing. And just to finish off today's session, I invite you to imagine an intention that you would like to carry with yourself through the next week. What's your intention for the next week? Your intention is kind of like a goal or a thing to focus on. What do you intend to do with yourself over the next week? It could be something as simple as just practicing more self-awareness, more self-reflection throughout the week. Could be more gratitude, could be more openness in your relationships, more consistency in your practices. It could be anything. Just take a moment to feel into that intention. Take another deep breath. And let go. All right. Great work, guys. So you can write down that intention in your journal after this session and enjoy the rest of your week. Happy Wednesday. Great work for showing up, for being here, for logging in to the awareness point. And I hope you have an awesome week. I'll speak to you soon. Bye.